Canadians lost their jobs in a single month as a result of COVID-19 and the health crisis. But that just tells you part of the story. Another million Canadians have a job, but they have no work. Over 800,000 Canadians have lost 50% of their wages, and many others don't even qualify for the government support, especially some of the most vulnerable. Now, yesterday, Parliament passed a 75% wage subsidy, while the Corona Emergency Response Benefit is putting $2,000 a month into the pocket of some Canadians who are out of work. But the NDP want to see a higher wage subsidy. They also want to make the benefit accessible to all Canadians. No more criteria. How much would that cost? How would that work? Let's find out. Joining us now is the NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh. Sir, I hope you and your family are okay in the midst of this crisis. Let's first talk about the 75% wage subsidy package that was debated yesterday in Parliament. Is it enough? Do you believe it captured everything you'd like to see?
Well, the 75% was a number that I put out when we met last for the previous emergency session because it was in line with what other countries are doing. We've seen UK, Denmark, and Sweden do at least 75% of a wage subsidy. So that's something that I called for, and I'm happy to see the government moving on that because it's a subsidy tied directly to keeping people employed, making sure people have a job. It also helps businesses stay afloat where they can continue to keep people on the payroll. So this is a good initiative. I want to see more supports for small business. And one of the things that I particularly want to see is a pause on mortgage, both residential and commercial, so that we can work towards a pause on residential and commercial rent as well. That's something that restaurant owners and small business have been telling me as one of their biggest fixed costs.
So how would that work?
They're struggling.
Like I'm just trying to figure out how long would that take place for, and how would that work? Like, who would pay the landlords, or is it just telling the banks you cannot close a mortgage, just delay everything for 4 months?
Well, that's exactly it. Everyone's doing their part, and at this point in time, we know that the big six banks have posted nearly $50 billion in profits last year alone. They've got massive profits that they've earned, and they can ensure they can also play their part. And so the federal government has jurisdiction over banks and setting of rates. They can absolutely enforce, using the powers that we have at the federal level, that the banks put a pause on mortgage. If we have a pause on mortgage, then we can put a pause on rent. We can work with provinces to make sure that that happens, and also ensure that happens for commercial rent and mortgage as well, so that no one is going to be out of a place of work as a result of this crisis. Those are some of the initiatives.
Right. That's a heavy hand, but okay, so that's one proposal. You've also called for the emergency relief benefit program. I just want people to appreciate this is not the 75% wage subsidy. This is the up to $2,000 a month for 4 months. That's $8,000. There are criteria for that. You're saying there should be no criteria, that even rich people should get it, like mailing out $2,000 checks to everybody. Well, how would that work?
Well, not at all. What I've said is the first approach should be we should make sure we send out money to all Canadians. As you know, Evan, there's a small percentage of people that are very wealthy. The vast majority of Canadians are those that are in a difficult situation right now. We need to make sure that this help is available to everybody. Instead of trying to sift through who's covered, who's not, let's cover everybody, and we can easily tax back and recover the amount that wasn't needed by those families that were not in a difficult position.
So how much would that cost? Let's just focus on that. How much would it cost to give $2,000 to every Canadian adult, as you're talking about?
Wait, $2,000. So we would factor in $2,000 for every adult, and an additional $250 for each child is what we're proposing. We could easily figure that out with the population and with the Statistics Canada details that the government has access to. We can
I can tell you. Well, you know, according to Kevin Milligan, who's an economist in Vancouver, 30 million adults getting $8,000 is $240 billion. That doesn't count the 75% subsidy. So you think mailing out $240 billion program to many people that don't need it and then you just think you'd claw back?
Evan, that's not the case. You know that the percentage of Canadians that earn a lot of money is a small percentage. The vast majority of Canadians are actually struggling. And for me, the thought of some people getting access to a direct benefit that don't need it versus the millions of Canadians right now that are falling through the cracks, I would rather make sure that no one falls through the cracks than some people receive it that they don't need it, and we tax that back.
But how do you tax it back? I mean, it sounds easy, but I think it's worthwhile noting.
One other really important thing.
Okay,
I put forward that right now there's a bunch of criteria that are creating a barrier for people. For example, someone who's earning a very nominal amount of money a very limited amount of money just because their work has been scaled down, they are precluded from applying to the CERB at this point in time. We've got people who are receiving a royalty. Maybe it's an artist, a Canadian musician, who is receiving a very nominal royalty of $50 a month. Just over that $50 a month, right, they're not receiving the benefit.
But
so what I've said to the Prime Minister, he should announce today that if you need this benefit, if you need money right now, everyone who needs the money right now should apply for it while the government fixes these gaps that we've asked them to fix.
But to be candid, everyone who needs it is applying for it. There's 5 million people who have. So if that's $240 billion, that
there's millions of Canadians that need it desperately that don't apply.
I get it, but there's not and believe me, I appreciate that we need to support Canadians. The question is, therefore, do you give it to everyone? You still have the business bailouts. You still have maybe an energy bailout. Like if that's $240 billion, and then do you have any idea of what the total cost of all these aid packages would be in your, if the Prime Minister actually listened to what you were saying? Do you have any?
We know that there's a need right now, and the current system isn't working. So we propose a solution right now for everyone who needs help. And the government has admitted that there are a lot of people falling through the cracks. 1 in 3 people that need it actually aren't able to apply for it. That's millions of Canadians. The Prime Minister has admitted it. We're saying get rid of the criteria. It's too complicated to say this person can and can't apply with these very random technicalities. People who are earning a limited income, someone who's earning $100 a month, just because they're earning $100 a month can't get this benefit over that small amount. So we're saying, let's get rid of the criteria, allow Canadians to apply if they need help, and the government can fix the gaps in the system.
Do you want to see the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit, $2,000 a month, translate or transition eventually into a permanent guaranteed basic income? Would you like to see that happen as well?
Well, it's something we can look at. What I think we can absolutely commit to is the idea that we need to improve our social safety net. So that proposition is one to consider, but I absolutely know we need to invest more in healthcare. I absolutely know that there's far too many people falling behind when it comes to lack of access to things like medication coverage. We know there's a lot of gaps in our social safety net, and the crisis that we're in right now has exposed those gaps, and we need to do a lot better. And I'm hoping at the end of this, when we come out of it, we don't go back to normal. We go back to something, we actually move to an improvement where we take better care of one another and have better programs in place that respond to the needs of people.
All right, I really appreciate you joining us on an important weekend. Leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh. Thank you, sir.